And welcome, everybody. Welcome back to the Paramedic AF show. We have an amazing guest with us who you may not recognize the name, but you have probably seen his work. Code 3 came out in theaters just recently. It's also on streaming now. This is the guy that is responsible for it. So, Patrick, thank you for joining us. Very, very, very excited about tonight. This is going to be awesome.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
So, I guess let's start with more of the personal stuff. Tell us about your career as a medic, kind of what your starting point was, the kinds of experiences that led you to this project and what you're doing right now.
Sure. So my entire career has been kind of a series of happy accidents. The short version is I got into EMS by absolute accident. So I was after high school I went to community college, and I was looking for a course to make me a full-time student because of some stuff that had happened that none of your listeners care about. I had dropped from being a full-time student because some courses were basically canceled prior to me knowing about it. And so this is back in the day when course catalogs were on paper because I'm old. And I was flipping through this course catalog just trying to find something to make me a full-time student so I could keep my parents' health insurance. And I just came across and I saw the number 8 and I said, oh, that's perfect. That's exactly what I need. And then I looked over and it said EMT basic. And I said, sign me up. Let's go. That was literally how I got into EMS. I just figured I always wanted to be a doctor, and so I figured going to EMT school would be a good idea. And in the back of my brain, I just thought, if something bad were to happen, maybe I'd be useful. That was the literal amount of thought that took me into EMS. And I signed up, was in the class, and started doing clinical rotations. And my very first day in the emergency room, I signed in and met the charge nurse, and she goes, they're working a code in the trauma room. You ought to go check it out. And, filled with apprehension and no idea if I'm even going to like this stuff. And I opened the door, and it was, I swear, a made-for-TV moment. It was back when you had the paddles, the hand paddles. The physician was leaning over the person, and he yells, clear, bam, and the body jumps. And I just said, this is the coolest job ever. I want to do this. And I was right there. And the funniest bit about that was way back when I was going to EMT school, you needed 10 hours in the ER and 10 hours in the back of the unit, and then obviously you had to pass the tests. And I did, I think, something around 130 clinical hours. And so the charge nurse was like, once you get your license, would you please just put an app in and we'll just pay you to be here? And that's how
pretty
I got
great.
my start. I was actually too young to work on the ambulance. I was I was 19. And their insurance at the time required you to be 21 years old. And so I couldn't work on the ambulance because I couldn't drive it. So I worked in the emergency room, which actually made me a much better medic because, the emergency room is going to see much higher acuities and you're exposed to much more medications and things that you might get exposed to out in the field, but having a physician or a nurse to be able to converse with and understand what the pathophysiology of these drugs are, et cetera, was really a great opportunity for me. And then I joined the fire department at the same time. So the thing that always cracked me up is I could drive an 85-foot-long fire truck, but I couldn't drive an ambulance
But not
until I was 21. So I did that, went all the way through paramedic school. Again, back then it was a 2-year process, and did that, and just sailed all the way through, just never stopped. Went from EMT to, again, back in the day they had an intermediate, and then from intermediate to paramedic. And then from there, I worked in Illinois for a very short period of time in 911, and then I moved to South Carolina because I also got my associate's degree in biology and transferred to the University of South Carolina and worked 911 out there for the 6.5 years while I was doing my undergrad and grad school. And then once I finished that, I did my postgraduate externship at Johns Hopkins Hospital. And because they were paying us like interns, I was on their critical care transport team as well. So I did that on the weekends. And then when I finally got a job in California, I moved out here and worked for a private ambulance service for about 10 minutes, and then realized that working 2 jobs was no longer viable, and I was fortunate enough to be making enough money after grad school that I didn't need to work 2 jobs. So that is a long-winded answer to a very simple question, but I worked 911. I worked in EMS for the better part of a dozen years.
I mean, that's a pretty wild combination of how you got into everything. I kind of sort of like fell into it as well. So like I can totally appreciate that process. It's so funny that you went to school so close to us. I mean, Columbia is what, an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours away from us.
Yeah, we've got a USC campus up here. We're in the northern part of the state, up in the Spartanburg area. So
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
we got a
Beautiful
little bit
area.
of
Love
USC up
Spartanburg.
here. Yeah, it's an interesting place. Very interesting place.
The best
So,
part, the
right.
best thing about going to USC and then moving to California is being able to tell everyone that I went to the real USC, which I personally just chuckle and love every moment. But when they start to put up a fight, I don't know about you. I don't know if you guys went to Carolina or not, but it's everywhere
No.
that the university was started in 1801. And so I think
Yeah.
they make you memorize that at orientation. And so I get to confidently tell everybody we were a university before you were a state, so we win.
That's hilarious. That's awesome. That's like the top-notch comeback ever. Well, so with your progress, like through school and education and 911 experience and everything, what inspired you like for the Code 3 project?
So Code 3, remember I said earlier that everything has been a happy accident. It
Yeah.
really was. Code 3 was nothing more than a homework assignment originally. So my undergraduate
What?
degree at USC, yeah, my undergraduate degree is in public relations, and part of that program required me to take a creative writing class. Not a screenwriting class, just a creative writing class. And I came in one day and it was one of those, I had this hellacious 14-hour shift that was supposed to be 12 hours. We've all worked those shifts.
Yep.
And so
Hmm.
I'm begrudgingly in class the morning of that day. And this professor just kind of sits back and he said, if you want to tell a compelling story, write what you know. And that's very cliche now, but it was the first time I had ever heard that. And as a college student that was burnt out and just not having it, I just remember thinking, "Do you want a story? I'll tell you a story." Wrote this
Right.
36-page short story of me screaming into the void about EMS and burnout and everything else. And I think you guys will appreciate this, especially your audience. The title of my short story was "Fake Stories from a Real Ambulance Driver," and
I
and
don't know what's my favorite part about that. The fact that 36 pages was short or the title.
and so yeah, so I wrote the paper, or I'm sorry, I wrote the short story, and it just sat. I never had aspirations of turning it into a movie. It was literally a homework assignment. Put it on the
Hmm.
shelf, and like anybody else, you tell stories around Christmas and Thanksgiving with family, and they're always going, "That's insane. That can't be real." Yada yada yada.
Hmm.
And flash forward after graduating from grad school, I'm visiting my brother in LA, and he said he got sick and tired of me saying something, and he goes, "Why don't you do what everybody does in LA, and that's write a script?" And I told him, I've never written. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know how to write a script. And so we got the programming software to do that. It's called Final Draft, and we got it, and he just said, "You're not leaving until you write that short story and put it into a script." And so I said, "Okay, fine." So over the week, I basically transcribed my short story into a script, and it was awful. Let me be clear: the first drafts are always terrible. Uh,
Isn't it usually?
yeah, first drafts are always terrible. But I felt very accomplished. I had never done that before. I said, "Cool, I wrote a script. Great, whatever." And my brother read it and he said, "This is terrible. We need to work on it." Because again, I don't know anything about script writing.
Yeah.
It's not what I went to school for. And so, um, for anybody who does know anything about scripts, there's obviously the character dialogue, but then to the side there's always action sequences, things that the writer is telling, like the actor gets in the ambulance and they do this. Well, they're normally like 3 to 4 sentences long, and it's usually the director will read that and figure out with the actors what to do. Mine was the exact opposite. I would write paragraphs of like, the stretcher goes in through this. You open the left door first, then the right. Like, it was like step by. There was a scene I wrote in there about how to intubate, and it was like came straight out of the NREMT textbook. Like first you pull out your laryngoscope, then you, and I mean just
Oh no.
pages of stuff that no actor in their right mind cares about. Um,
I love
and
that.
so yeah, we trimmed all of that out and got it to a point where it was at least feasible. And what I've said on every interview I've had is you have to be good and then you have to get lucky. And I know that I'm good. And the part where I got really lucky was my brother, who's a producer on the film, was at the time co-workers with Chris Leone, who's the director and the co-writer. And so my brother approached Chris you know, 15 years ago, and said, "Hey, Chris, do you want to read a script?" And Chris said, "Absolutely not," which is the right answer in LA because everybody wants you to read stuff if you're a writer. And Chris, and also just to give credit, Chris his due, he was a writer. He was in the WGA. He was in the DGA. He'd worked on a lot of projects and was very good, very talented, obviously, if you've seen the film. But even before that, had done work. And so for my brother to basically approach Chris and say, "Hey, you want to read this rando script?" is like, no, nobody. Yeah, you can go to any street corner in LA. Somebody's got a script in their back pocket and they want you to read it. But my brother is very, very determined and really wore Chris down and just told Chris it's about being a paramedic. And Chris asked, you know, what's he know about that? He said, well, he is one.
Fair.
And so he read it, and as Chris says, he said it was one of the things that he loved about it was EMS told through a comedic lens. The dark humor and stuff came through as a comedy, which was something he wasn't expecting, and it was good enough for him to get intrigued and to get involved in. And we had our first meeting, I don't know, a couple of weeks after he read the first script, and to Chris's credit, he never asked me what was the worst thing I'd ever seen until we were much further down the project. But he did on our first meeting. He goes, tell me something that would surprise me. And I just started laughing. And I said, Chris, I know what brains smell like. And he almost fell out of his chair. And that was the start of our friendship. And then he decided
that's a good one.
Yeah. And so then he came on board and was the co-writer. And then we wrote on it for another 12 years together. Not full time, but it was, you know, we would work on it and then not touch it for a month, or then email each other and say, hey, I was thinking about this. None of us got paid for any of that work. It was just kind of a passion project. And then once Chris and I got it to a point where we thought it was really strong, he had his representation, his managers and agents kind of shop it around. And the much, much shorter version is it landed in Rainn Wilson's lap, the guy who plays Randy. Rainn absolutely loved it, but even then it was a 180-page script, and most scripts are around 110 to 125 pages. That's it. And 180 is like ridiculously long.
Yeah.
And Rainn really loved it and helped us trim it down and cut it down, and then got us Wayfair, which was the studio, and the financing, and then off to the races. So anybody who says they made a movie in like 6 months, unless they're like, you know, Christopher Nolan, is lying.
It's amazing to hear how long like it had been in the works, because like literally like didn't hear anything about it until
it was honestly just a little earlier, like around summertime, I think, is when we first heard about it.
Yeah, I was about to say, I mean, it hadn't been too terribly long, and it's amazing that this is something that you literally have been working on for years and years. But I mean, it came across so well.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we were very fortunate. We shot in 2023, January through March of 2023, and we finished 2 weeks before all the strikes happened. So we were very lucky.
Oh goodness, yep.
And the benefit of that obviously was that, you know, the acting and the writing bits were done, and the Directors Guild never went on strike. So all the things that happen after you shoot the movie, the editing and the sounds and all that stuff, could continue on because those specific specialties did not go on strike or hadn't gone on strike yet. But all of the what's called principal photography, the acting and that stuff we were all done. So we threaded that needle just perfectly.
Oh man,
that's a butt pucker not related to the field.
Yeah, I know, it very much was. We were very lucky. And then, you know, after all of that, once we were done and edited, we were lucky enough to get into the Toronto Film Festival as their selects program. So we were not in their juried program. So the Toronto Film Festival gives out obviously the TIFF awards. We were not eligible for their awards, but basically the oversimplified version is they have all the films that are up for awards, and then they have like 10 movies that they pick every year that say they didn't make it here, but we think they're really good and you should watch them. And we were in the selects program. We were in that second tier and got a lot of really great reception from that, and then ultimately got a distribution deal. And then that didn't happen until obviously about 2 months ago, where it kicked off, and we had a limited theater run. So yes, for everyone who comments, I know we weren't in all the theaters. I'm really sorry about that. I had no control over that. But
Of course.
we did the best we could, and now we're on streaming on Apple and Amazon where you can rent or buy it. Yeah, that's pretty much a story of Code 3.
That's so cool though. I do have to ask, did you try and go to an insurance company?
Actually, so you're the only person who's asked me this, and the funniest thing about all of this was I had gotten laid off quite literally 2 weeks before the movie started to shoot, and we didn't know we were greenlit yet. So I had lost my job right after Christmas because the company I was working for made some financial choices, and so I was putting my applications out trying to get stuff after the first of the year, and Chris calls me, I think like the second week of January, and he goes, "We're going to start scouting some things. Are you available?" And I was like, "You're never going to believe this. My schedule is wide open. Let's go."
I'm free.
Yeah, I'm free. And so the short answer is yes, but the reason this ties back to your question is while we were shooting, on one of the days we were shooting, I get a job interview for an insurance company. Kind of in my specialty of healthcare stuff that I absolutely assure that none of your listeners care about. But I get this job interview. So I tell everybody, and I'm on set every single day. I was the medical consultant on set to make sure they were doing things right. I told everybody like 3 days ahead of time, look, on this day, I need an hour. Like, you guys are on your own. Figure it out. You're big boys. And I go, and I'm actually in Rain's trailer. He let me borrow his trailer for this job interview. So I'm sitting in there. I'm wearing a suit from the waist up because just like, the podcast, you can't see from the waist down. So I'm in a suit and tie and kind of going through like the initial like, hi, this is who I am kind of stuff in the interview process. And then, we start getting into some of the details, and all of a sudden somebody starts pounding on the door. And I'm really sorry. Hold on, let me go. And I was like, you what? And they go, oh, you're needed on set. I was like, I'm aware. I told you guys, I literally need an hour. That's it. So I come back. And of course, I had to stand up, go answer the door. So the lady sees me in like shorts, and I come back in, and she goes, "What was all that about?" And I said, "Well, I'm on a movie set. I'm sorry, they had a question for me," and the lady just couldn't wrap her head around the fact that I was on a movie set. She goes, "Oh, like," she was being sarcastic. She's like, "Oh, you're on a movie set." I'm like, yeah, I am. We're shooting this movie called Code 3. I'm the writer, one of the writers. I'm also the technical consultant. And I said they were setting up a shot. They needed a question, and like she couldn't let it go that, oh, you're hot. And it was like that's when I knew the interview was over. And I was like, this has been fun, thanks. But, so no, I've never worked in insurance, but I did interview for one.
That is too funny. Oh my goodness, I love that.
Well, so I was talking with a friend of mine, and he made the comment, and I don't know if maybe there was copyright issues that couldn't happen, but he was like, they missed a golden opportunity for him to be like, oh, I'm going to work at a paper company. but yeah, we were kind of we were wondering in general, like how much of you is in Randy versus how much is just kind of cumulatively borrowed, because we all know people like Randy. We've all been there.
Yeah.
How much of that is you versus just a compilation of things?
Great question. And I'll start out by answering it this way. So Code 3 is not an autobiography. The main character's name is Randy. It's not Patrick for that reason, for lots of reasons. Mm-hmm. But Randy is certainly 85% me. Like, there's no way. I mean, I was the guy that was writing it. I was the one, well, again, Chris co-wrote it. I'm not diminishing his part, but like the whole EMS viewpoint, all of that, most of that was coming from my vantage point. And so it's my looking out into the world and in the first draft, especially the earlier drafts, they were dark comedies, but I was working. I was burnt out as I wrote the initial drafts, and I think that kind of carried over. It certainly got much more palatable for normal human beings, but at the beginning, yeah, I mean, it was very much me. A lot of it was me.
What? Because obviously we all find things to take away from that. You made us cry. Not gonna lie, like we've both been doing this a long time. I really typically do not get emotionally connected to patients at all. And that's more of a coping mechanism than anything, really. Mm-hmm. But you had us in tears. Like we both just almost had to pause it for a minute and be like, whew, huh, that final wreck scene just did it.
With the baby, yeah.
Ooh, but what for you? What's the biggest takeaway you want people to get from this? Both the non-EMS community, but also the EMS community specifically?
I think for the EMS community, it is to be seen and validated and heard and represented. And I hope the through line of gratitude comes through in the film. And part of that is less, beat pots and pans at 7 o'clock and, woo-ha heroes. More of like, I'm hoping that for anybody who does it, who's still working or is in the field still, it feels more like a chuck on the shoulder, like one person passing the baton to the next, saying like, hey, I see you. Thanks for what you guys are doing. It means a lot and it matters. For the non-EMS community, I'm hoping that it's a viewpoint in to understand that there are huge pay disparities. There's an immense amount of training that goes into getting, again, when I started, it was a 2-year process and nobody was paying me. I had to pay out of pocket to get my paramedic. And then, as you guys know, you have to pay to get your ACLS. You got to pay to get your PALS, your PHTLS, all of these other things before I'm even allowed to step foot in an ambulance and hopefully earn some of that money back. And I was teasing somebody. I go, once you're working 911, it takes a month to recoup the cost of getting your certification before you can actually start, even trying to turn a profit. So for me, for anybody who's not working EMS, the normies out there, to understand what this job really is and to see that there are significant issues both in pay, mental health, and burnout that are often glossed aside because there is what I've discovered through this process is that there's kind of like this idea that these people are heroes and they're getting their cup filled by running calls. And it's like, no, man, everybody has a job. Like, the job stops being all that fun every day real quick if it's your full-time job.
Well, and I love that the calls. How did you pick the calls that were highlighted in the movie? Because I feel like the calls and the patients they got very much showed, like, I guess you could say, like the worst days that we tend to have, but also some of the some of the frequent flyers that we get too. Yeah, the mundane, the frequent flyers that we get, and of course the overdose.
Yeah, those calls. So the first, like, remember I told you the first draft was 180 pages almost,
Yes,
if not longer. So we had an entire Rolodex of calls to choose from. But two of the things that Chris and I aligned on very early on, way before we even had a whiff that this might become a thing, was that, number one, we were going to get the medicine right, at least as accurate as we could to the time we shot, or at least as close to the protocols that I used to work under. So I'm well aware that in 10 years, protocols are going to change, and they're going to be like, oh my God, they gave somebody oxygen, whatever. But as close to when we shot, it's as accurate as we could make it. And the second thing that I think is really important was that we promised both of each other that we would never make fun of the person calling 911. Everything else can be funny. The setups can be funny. The scenes can be funny. What happens can be funny. But we intentionally worked really hard to never make fun of the patient. And that sounds easy, but that's really hard sometimes. Like, if you think about Mr. President, there's a lot of ways that we could be making fun of Mr. President, but we intentionally chose not to because, to me, one of the things I used to say all the time when I was working was, I don't get to pick your emergency. You ask for help. You have run out of ideas of how to help yourself, whether that's a hangnail or whether you're choking to death, right? Like, you've run out of ideas of how to help yourself. Now it's my turn. You've asked for help. My job is to show up and help. So those were the two things early on that we aligned on and said, like, we're never going to make fun of the patient. I mean, even the first, Satan and his messenger, like, we're not making fun of him. We're making fun of the scenario that's around him and the issues why he's acting that way. But we don't make fun of him.
Of course. It translated very well. And as for you talking about how, you don't know how it's going to age in, 10 plus years or whatever, but Bringing Out the Dead is still one of the most popular movies that a lot of us in the field love. Like, some of the medicine, it is what it is. But I definitely think this is going to age well because, I mean, the medicine and the feeling, because what's changed in EMS over the past 50 years? Well, medicine might have, but the burnout and everything else, I mean, it is there. If anything, it's additional pressure, as call volume has increased for bullshit or oh shit.
And so to your question about how do we pick calls, when I wrote the first few versions of the script and Chris read it, you could have taken the script, thrown it in the air, picked up the pages in any order, because the script that I wrote read like a shift from hell. Like, you could go from nursing home to cardiac arrest to stroke to, kid hit by a car, whatever. and there was no real narrative arc. And Chris's beauty of his talent is really making really tough decisions in order to bring a good narrative story to what was already kind of the bones of it there. We knew we wanted to keep the burnout story because that's central in all of it, and then expanding that to not just EMS. So like Dr. Serrano, we have that beautiful scene where we explain him. He's not a cartoon villain. Like he is under the same crushing burdens that the rest of us are. So it was really just picking the scenes that help tell that story the best.
What's been the response from the EMS community? I know there was a lot of people who were going above and beyond bitching about the theater stuff, and it really upset me that people like Rain were having to shut off the comments on their TikTok videos and stuff because they were getting so. At least that was my understanding that's why, because there was so much negative pushback from the EMS community, which really to me saddens me. Because I'm like, guys, this is why we can't have fucking nice things, because you bitch and complain even when you're handed a silver platter, you're still gonna find something to complain about it. So what has your observation been outside of the theater problem, as far as the reception from the EMS community?
Outside of the theater problem, it's been really great. I've been getting, people that I've worked with across the country, and random strangers that I'll get messages, and it's all been really, really positive. I mean, I promised myself I wouldn't read the comments, and that lasted all of about 14 seconds. And then like I read as much as I can, and there's to me it falls into like two categories of, and I'll exclude everybody who's not EMS, so just people who are working in medicine or presumably working in medicine. It's either they nitpick every single independent frame, and they're just like, one guy pointed out, well, they were running the IV and the IV was shut off. It's like, yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. That was the cut we used, and that one shot that the turn wheel was turned down. You got me. And then the outside of the handful of people that are doing that kind of stuff, the majority has been really superlative, and I couldn't be prouder from the community about their responses, because here's the flip side to that. I know that if the movie wasn't good, I would never hear the end of it. And not only that, like, we are not a bunch of people. Like, if your movie is trash, you're going to hear about it. And so, like, part of me was holding my breath, especially prior to it coming out. I'm on a couple of interviews going, we got the medicine right, everybody. Like, we did it. We worked really hard. Blame me. I was the guy there making sure that the turn wheel was up, and the one that got me was down, or the thumb wheel, sorry.
That kills me that is literally something that somebody was nitpicking on. Like, oh my God. That's nice.
But yeah, it's been really good.
Oh my goodness. Well, I'm glad it was overall positive. Of course, we're always gonna have the haters. I mean, some of the stuff that we talk about in the podcast, like, you can't argue with it. There's statistics and research and everything else that goes into it, and people are like, "You're wrong." It's like, boo boo.
Put a helmet on. Life is hard.
My favorite thing that a medical director told me in paramedic school was, if ever you're like concerned about something, put on a helmet and lick a window. That way you feel safe and you get the stupid out of your system.
Love it.
So maybe we need to wear helmets more often.
So
I got to keep it in. That's why I wear mine.
Yeah.
Do you still work in the field full time, or is it more of a side thing, or are you out at this point?
I am still licensed, but I'm out. I haven't touched a patient clinically in over a decade. I keep my cert. So it's funny. It's a simple question with a complicated answer. I was out. I let it lapse, and I think 2013 is when it lapsed. And in 2024, I got it back because I knew the movie was coming out, and I thought it would be good to have, so that way I could come on these podcasts and go, yeah, hey, I'm still a paramedic. So I had it for 12 years, then I did not have it for 10 years, and I got it again. But the funniest bit was taking the National Registry again and forgetting everything that I thought I knew. Like, back when I was a medic, we were given LASIK and oxygen like candy. And so I start taking these things again. It's like, oh, wait a minute. Okay, so this is wrong. I got to relearn some of the things. But yeah, so I am still licensed both in California and nationally registered. But yeah, there was a gap of about 10 to 12 years I did not.
It's so funny that he brings up Lasix because in paramedic school they still teach Lasix and procanamide and verapamil and like
Bertilion.
do what? And what?
Bertilion.
Yes, yeah, like some of
Bertilion.
these we can't listen, we can't give them, but we certainly are going to learn them. You learn about the insulin, but you can't give the insulin right now. So that's funny that you bring that. Well, yeah. Well, a lot of critical care locations they'll let like nurses in critical care give it, but you have to give all the electrolytes and all that kind of stuff. But that is too funny. Speaking of meds, I think one of my favorite scenes was when they were in the nursing home and grandma was dead and she was like, "What are the vital signs?" and all that. Just totally meant it was perfect.
Well, literally, when that we were watching that scene, right before he said, "Well, pulses 0," literally she was like, "Well, it's 0."
Listen, you had our kids totally sold because they love hearing stories like from us when we come on shift. I'm a black cloud. So
Hi, I'm a white cloud.
yeah. So the kids love hearing like the stories and everything. So like to see a movie like that they could picture what mom and dad do, like even our kids thought it was like the coolest thing ever.
Well, and you did such a good job of telling the story without having to make it gratuitous. Like, okay, the vomiting in the first part, whew, that was a little too real.
Well, and the smelling brains.
Yeah, but you weren't. You told the story in a meaningful way, not for simply shock and awe. Because I think everybody's used to that. They're used to the shock and awe. They're not used to the personal element of it. And I think you did a great job.
Thank you. And in that first scene, the whole reason we did that for the first scene was we needed a hook to get non-EMS folks in, but we added a nod to those people that work. Like you see, because they hit a pothole, he crushes the Narcan, which is what causes the vomiting. Normally, if you give Narcan the way you're supposed to, typically, that doesn't happen. But we made sure that one shot where he's like, whoops, like, don't sit there.
Well,
so I mean, it's funny,
safety.
but there's a reason why it's funny.
Well, and scene safety with the poor student, like I have a class of 25 students right now, and they literally that's like the first thing that they love to do. They're like, BSI scene safe, and like when they go on ride times and then come back and share stories, they're like, there was a dog on scene, it wasn't safe, and I'm like, oh baby, if only you knew.
Yeah, I'm less worried about the dog. I'm more worried about the meth head in the closet that decides to come out. One of the things I loved to do back when I was a medic, I got the fortune to train a lot of people unofficially. You know how that goes. They usually put the new people with you, even though you don't get paid for that. And so it's kind of like they're running around going BSI scene safe, and it's like, but tell me what that means. We're coming up to the scene. There's a highway patrol officer over here. Tell me what you think this means in real life. Like, what are you looking for? What are you listening for? Like, that was one of the things I liked. You're like, it's a great catchphrase. That's wonderful. But like, make it real. We're walking into somebody's house. What are you looking for? And in South Carolina, I can't tell you how many times you open the front door and what's right on the inside of the door jam? A shotgun.
The gun. Yep.
You pick it up and you put it on the porch. That's what I always used to do. Every door I'd walk in, I'd look right behind the door jam. Hey, there's a shotgun right there. Click. First time I did that with one of the students, they're like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, we're gonna make sure that's not an arms leak.
That's funny. Yeah, our new catchphrase is "Welcome to EMS."
Yeah, she and I both had the same paramedic instructor, just vastly different years. And his line with us was always, when we were doing scenarios, the question he wanted us to ask on that was, do I see, hear, or smell anything unusual? That's my indication of something is going wrong. If I could smell something really bad.
It's funny. He never made us say that.
Really? No, I guess he stopped doing that. He stopped doing that by the time we got to y'all.
I'm kind of sad.
Now, I understand with that gap, because your gap in certification was right during the bulk of my career. I got into this in 2012, got my paramedic in 2016. But as we've seen, there's a lot of undertones in EMS that haven't changed, even as the medicine has changed. What would you say, from your perspective, if you had, a magic wand to fix 3 things in EMS? What would those things be?
I think the first, obviously, is going to be pay. I think that there is a significant disparity between what we make and what our colleagues in the hospitals make, and even our coworkers that are on the fire side and the police side. So you can't even get away from it when you start to say public safety. Public safety in general doesn't make that much, but if you look at the vast disparities in pay, especially when you look at EMS against everybody else, there's no way that that makes sense. It just doesn't, for any number of reasons. And tying it real quick to the movie, one of the things that we were very proud of is we're happy to yell at people and say, here are the problems. But I'm also personally, and I will speak for Chris in this instance too, we don't claim to be smart enough to know what all the answers are, but we could certainly say like, hey, look, pay is the single biggest factor here. If you are working anywhere and you go to your parking lot at your main substation or main station, and if you see Lyft and Uber stickers on people's car, you're not paying enough. There should be no reason why people have to work 2 jobs if you have all of this travel, training, and knowledge. The second thing I would fix would be access to mental health resources. I'm not saying that everybody who works 911 needs to go talk to a therapist every day. I do feel, and I've said this before to some people going into the field, is you should not register, but like pre-vet a therapist that works for you. It took me 2 years of like intense therapy to become normal, and that's something I worked really hard on. I was very lucky after I got out of EMS. I was making enough money to be able to afford to go to a therapist and do the things, and I was incredibly fortunate that I never struggled with alcoholism or drug addiction, or I don't know if we can say the S word, but like, I didn't have any of those problems, which doesn't make me tougher, better, stronger than anybody who does. I was just very lucky that those were not my struggles. And so, but finding, and I went through like literally 2 or 3 different therapists. I was like, this isn't working. Like, you and I are not on the same page. But once I found the one that I liked, that I knew that I could tell horrific stories to, and could work through some of those things, that to me was really valid. And I've told people, pre-vet the people that you need to call when you need to call them. So that way you're not dealing with does this person accept my insurance? Do they have an opening on their spot? Whatever. Spend the time and spend the money to find that way. You've got the number in your Rolodex for when that call hits. And it doesn't have to be, the other thing I tell people too is like, it's not necessarily the pediatric arrest. I mean, it could be, grandma fading away on the stretcher, but for whatever reason, that's the thing that trips you up. Like, that's when you make that call. It doesn't have to be like the horrific house fire where 18 people died. Those are terrible. I'm not diminishing that, but that doesn't mean that that's the call that does it. And oftentimes, volume is more than just the one tragic event. And then the last thing I would fix is, I don't know. Those are the 2 biggies. I think the ability to take sabbaticals. And I know that that's kind of a crazy idea. Told another way, somebody asked me for some advice who's just getting their paramedic, and they were in paramedic school. And I told them those 2 things already. And the biggest thing I told them was, when you take time off, take time off. And don't let the guilt of, like, I'm a medic and somebody might die. Not because I've got a God complex and I'm going to save everybody, but I don't know about you. Some of my supervisors would be like, oh, the county really needs you, man. Like, we're short. Things could get sideways. And like that always ate at me. And again, it's not because I'm gonna put my cape on and go save the world, but I certainly had this realization that I've got a unique skill set that I don't know what the percentage is, but solidly 85% of the population doesn't have. And this is my job, so I should be showing up to work and doing that, and cutting my vacation short, or taking half a shift when they really needed me. And what I tell everybody is, like, when you take your time off, take your time. You need time to get away from this. It could be incredibly fulfilling. I loved it. I loved EMS. I loved everything about it. I got a couple of awards back here. I loved the job. I loved being 18 through 28, I think, something like that. And I loved the feeling that no matter what that call was going to be, that me and my partner could figure it out. Like, whether I needed additional resources or extra help didn't matter. Like, I knew that we could put a plan together and at least get to the hospital. But the flip side to that is there is an immense amount of stress and fatigue that goes into having that skill set. And so I think it's important that you build relationships outside of EMS And I tell everybody too, cops and firefighters don't count.
Nope.
Nope.
I was a paramedic all through college, through 2 major degrees, and it's not like I didn't have friends that were normal college students, but the vast majority of my friends, especially because I work night shift, were cops, firefighters, and medics, and that's great. But it gets very insular very quickly, and if you don't have normal people to talk to, your barometer of wow, I'm really fucked up gets really diminished really quickly. Um, and so those are kind of my things.
Well, and it's funny you talked about percentages. Not to add to the guilt complex, because I personally, whenever someone would try and guilt trip me like that, I'd be like, yeah, sorry, no, I'm taking my time. But I actually did the math because my son was asking me about this earlier this week. EMS workers collectively make up 0.3% of the population. Full time only make up 0.07% of the population. So we're literally a 1% club, just not the other kind of 1% club most people think.
And twice the suicide rate of the normal population. So like there's a huge statistic right there.
Yep. When you look at the breakdown of all the certs, I think the like least amount of certification statistically was advanced EMTs, now that they've kind of combined, advanced with intermediate and all that. But I mean, paramedic is an exceedingly small percent of what we do as well. So it's definitely a small percent of the population. What I love is how you bring up like the calls that affect us. It's not necessarily the one call, although the one call may be the straw that breaks the camel's back, but is the long-term chronic stress. In September, we have podcasts that we talk about this, and we've deep dived into that. And I love that you bring light to that as well. That I mean, even in the movie Code 3, not just us talking now, but in the movie, like it's fascinating looking at just the long-term chronic stress that we have and bringing light to that, because a lot of the general population just kind of like, oh, well, it's not a big deal. It's okay.
You said you had a Rolodex of calls that you pulled into this. Is there a call that was either memorable or maybe not so memorable that you wanted included in this but didn't end up making the cut?
There was a call that we had where it was a really kind of dark stroke call that we ended up not using. And this is before we even shot. It's not like we shot the scene and got rid of it. But it was one of those things where we were talking about it. And the reality was it was pretty dark. And the hardest part for us was, especially with such a bloated script, was how does this move the story forward? And it was so similar in tone to the baseball scene that we just felt like we're just smashing pumpkins with a mallet at that point. So we had to get rid of it. To me, it hit really close to home. I think it's one of those things where I remember having the call or having a call with Chris and some of the other people, and I said the whole point is to jar the audience, where we go from nonsense to just soul crushing. And they were just like, no, that's too far. It's that we're already killing a kid. Like we can't go back and kill somebody else. It's like, all right.
I mean, I guess fair, I guess.
Yeah, that's exactly how that phone call went. What am I going to argue about? Well, yeah, no, we need to kill more people. No.
Well,
this isn't Game of Thrones. We don't need to kill everybody.
The fact that you bring
What?
I'm just snickering. EMS standing for extramarital sex, and then you bring it to the Game of Thrones, and just there's all the dark humor right there in just one sentence.
Yeah. Now, just out of personal curiosity, is there? And I don't know how the inner workings of how TV and film and all of that work. Is there enough potential interest, backing, whatever you want to call it, to do more, either a sequel or like even a mini series, maybe not even a full season TV series or whatever, but something like that?
Man, I hope so. I mean, I would love nothing more than to live in make believe for the rest of my career. That would be an amazing way to retire. The short answer is I don't know. We have to see how big of a success Code 3 is. As a first time writer coming out the gate, like you're only as good as your last thing. So I think Code 3 is doing well. I mean, are we Marvel? Absolutely not, but we were never intended to be. So it really comes down to, are people going to bank on that? Are enough people resonating with the story more importantly, are
Mhm.
enough people buying it and not pirating it? Yes, I see you. To make it commercially viable. Uh, and that's really the thing that comes. I mean, ultimately, it's a business like any other. Are we making enough money to be worthy of that reinvestment? But yeah, I mean, I would love to, even some of the TV shows that are on now, like Nashville 911 or whatever. Like, I'd love to get into that writers' room. And because of this movie, I did join. I was able to join the writers' union and the actors' union. So I mean, I have all of my cards for that. But I know Chris is open to it. I'm certainly open to it. We would love to somebody made the joke online, and I can't keep thinking about it. Who's making Code 4? And I was like, I don't think you know what that stands for, but yes, let's go.
That's
Fair.
that, that's awesome. Immersion and non-immersion all at the same time with a dead person.
God. Now, eh, tell me about Rainn Wilson's exposure to this, because obviously he latched onto it very quickly. What was his preparation process like for this? What did y'all put him through to get him ready for this?
Yeah, Rain latched onto the story very quickly. And in his book, The Bassoon King, he tells a story about needing EMS services with him and his family. And so he had some exposure to it earlier on in life. But as far as preparation for this film, I don't know everything that he did. But from what I did with him, we took Amy Carrero, who's the female lead, Little Rel Howery, which was his partner, and him. And I basically got 2 days with them. First day, we went to LA County Fire Station 14 in South Central. I was lucky enough I had some contacts and made some phone calls. And I said, listen, I've got one day. Give me your busiest house where we are just going to grind these people down. Like, I need them to experience, like, they need to see this. And I don't want somebody I don't need a retirement house. I need a house that's humping. And everybody said, Station 14 is where it's at. They're the busiest house in all of LA. And so drove over there, made friends with the captain, and basically told him my brief story. I was like, hey, here's who I am, blah, blah, blah. We'd love to be able to bring basically 3 actors and a director in and let them see what it's like. And so they were very gracious. We were very lucky. And so we brought them in for 12 hours. And so they rode with the fire guys. And in LA County, the way it works, EMS in LA is different from, well, everywhere is different. If you've seen one ambulance company, you've seen one ambulance company. But in LA County, the paramedics work for the fire department. And when you run a medical call, if it's a BLS call, the private ambulance will show up. And then the private ambulance, if it's just BLS, will take care of that call and take it away, and the medic stays on the fire truck. If it's an ALS call, what happens is the paramedic gets off the fire truck, goes into the ambulance, and assumes care all the way to the hospital inside the private company's ambulance. So basically, private company provides EMTs and a transport mechanism, and the paramedics with the drugs are on the fire truck. So that's why it made the most sense to put them in there. And so we did. We ran probably 8 to 10 calls with everybody there, and it was really, fun is not the right word, but from my vantage point, right? Like I've seen this for so long, like I know what's going to happen next for the most part. And watching these doe-eyed actors kind of walk in and be like, "Oh my god," and so yeah, so they experienced all of that stuff with the fire guys. They did some ride-alongs all the way to the hospital to see what it was like. And then the second day we got with them, everybody showed up, and Lifeline is a real ambulance company in Los Angeles. They're fantastic partners. I couldn't have asked for better partners. They provided us not only with an ambulance and a stretcher and everything, but like all the menial garbage, right? Like all the medical supplies, the IVs, the tubings, everything. They were just perfect partners. But so the second day I get with them, we get an ambulance at the station, and they're all getting ready to play with the toys. They're kind of milling about, looking at all the stuff, right? All the fun things. And I said, everybody, get in the back. And they said, what? And I said, get in the back of the truck. Don't put your seatbelt on. There's the oh shit bar. That's all you get. And we drove around downtown LA for like a half an hour. Listen to them, like, you can imagine going through traffic in LA. We get them back, and they're just like, yeah. They're like, how do you guys do this? And we're like, cool. So now you know what you have to do, because all of the scenes that are in the back of the truck are on a soundstage. Obviously, we're not driving through traffic with cameras and everything like that. So we were like, that's what it's going to feel like when you're acting in the back of this thing and there's people on this gurney. So that was the first thing. And then after we kind of brought them down, we taught them all the things that were going to happen in the script. So we ran 12 leads. We ran them through. We all got them. This is I'm very proud of this. We got all 3 of them healthcare provider CPR certified. They all got cards. So they had to PPM to get their card. So they had to learn how to use that.
That's awesome.
We taught them how to innovate. One of my biggest bones to pick is that CPR on screen is just garbage. It's terrible. It's either on a bed or it's like this fluffy, limp wrist, never going to happen in real life stuff, which, is no actor wants their chest crushed. I can fully understand that, but you can fix that in post-production like we did. If they want to put in the effort, they can. And so we taught them. I wanted the CPR done on screen on our movie to be done right, because people emulate what they see in movies, and I want them to know, push hard, push fast. That's never going to change. So yeah, we got them all CPR certified. We taught them how to innovate. We taught them how to trauma package. We taught them how to start IVs. Like I said, we taught them how to do EKGs. And the other thing too, like, I didn't expect them to memorize all that stuff. We just had literally like 8 or 9 hours to get them through it. And then I was on set every day. So when we were doing medically intense scenes like baseball or the first car accident scene, I was there. We were doing a lot of rehearsals with them. And the funniest thing that I learned was that none of them have any real medical training. And the baseball scene in particular, the guy that Mike is named after is one of my old partners. When I first got started, we went to paramedic school together. He's a great guy. And I invited him, and he ended up being on set the days that we were doing the baseball scene. And he is he's an active paramedic. He was working on the fire department at the time. And I said, Mike, here's the scenario. Let's go run off and practice, because we're going to show them how to do it. So we go run off and we run the scenario. And I'm shaking rust off. Like I said, it hadn't worked clinically in a while. I knew what I wrote and I knew what the protocols were. But, him and I kind of fell back into our old routines. Like boom, 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 boom. We're done. We're like, cool, this is the way we would run it. This is good. Thumbs up. And we go over to Rain, Rel, and Amy. And we said, okay, so here's the scenario. Here's what's going to happen. And then we just went through the whole thing. Boom, CPR, we're shocking, drugs, and this, that, and the other thing. And on the stretcher, and we're off. And we get done, and all 3 of them look at us. Their eyes are like this. And they're just like, I think it was Amy who just said, no. And we're like, what do you mean no? This is what you're going to be doing on camera. And they go, that all looked really good, but like, we don't know anything that you guys just did. And so then we went through and we were like explaining, and this was my fault. As a consultant, this was absolutely my fault. I'm explaining clinically why we're doing the things that we're doing as if these people are ENT students. Like, we're going to check for a pulse. We're going to listen to lung sounds. We are going to ventilate. And finally, I can't remember which one of them said it, and they go, we don't care about any of that. Treat this like a dance. And they go, and I was like, what are you talking about? They're like, just tell us right hand goes here, left foot goes here. And it finally dawned on me, like, these people are not going to be asked to do things to make sure that we have a good outcome. It just needs to look right in front of the camera.
We're trying to put them through crash paramedic school in 8 hours.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. I love that for them.
Yeah, and so somebody actually wrote it down, and in that scene, you'll see Amy writing on a scratchbook when she's taking vitals or something. And if the camera would show that, it says, put your right hand here, put your right foot there.
Oh my God. That's the kind of bloopers that totally should have been recorded and shown in after credit type stuff. So if y'all do this again, you totally need to do stuff like that. That would be fantastic.
So yeah, when it finally dawned on me, because the other thing too is we don't shoot the movie in order. If anybody who doesn't know that, like you shoot everything out of order based on money and what's available, etc. But yeah, so it was really funny. Once it finally, like when they said that to me, I was like, oh yeah, that, like, nobody cares if they're gonna, check for lung sounds or not. Like, spoiler alert, the kid's alive and well and he's fine. But in the movie, he doesn't have such a great outcome. And so, like, nobody there is expecting to. We all know what happens. What's on the page. So that was a big eye-opening moment for me.
So we appreciate your time. I know this is a weekend evening. Not everybody wants to be doing something on a Sunday evening. So we do have one I actually see a little tradition we're doing with our interviews, and that is, if you could go back, so right now with what you know, what you've experienced and everything, if you could go back to the version of you that was starting EMT school, go back to yourself at that point in your life, what is it that you would tell yourself? Whether a lesson, a perspective, some advice, what have you?
Run away. Run quickly. Go do something.
We hear that
Go
quite
join the
often.
fire department. Those guys are cool.
They're the real heroes.
Oh,
Go
goodness.
be a hose jockey.
I don't wanna.
No, like I said before, I really did love this job, and I'm happy to make fun of it and tease it like any other veteran who's done this type of stuff. But I did. I thoroughly the more I look back on the career, the more I'm grateful I had it and what it taught me. So I'm very grateful for it. What I would have told old me back in the day is really what I told everybody else, and that was, make normal friends. Don't make the job your priority, because the job's going to give you everything no matter what. Just don't let it. I heard somebody say it. I wish I could tell you who, and I'm really sorry if the person who actually said this to me hears this. The job will give you everything, but it can also take everything away from you if you're not careful. And I think I was in that latter camp. So I think making sure younger me would have understood, like, take your time off, make friends with normal human beings, and keep those relationships up. And I told somebody else this too. I go, it's not fair, but you have to put in the work. Like, nobody comes to knock on your front door and says, hey, let's be friends. Like, you have to put in the work. You got to be the friend first. Yeah, take your time, make friends. And back when I was coming through and coming up, like, asking for help was a sign of weakness, and just completely call out that bullshit and make sure you have the access to the resources when you need them. Because there were a few times in my career when I actually was using the words burnout, and I knew that things were bad, and the response I got, and I don't blame this person, because they didn't have a better answer. But there was a very poignant moment that I remember. I went to somebody and I said, "Look, man, I think I'm burning out. I think I might need some help." And they just laughed, like this dark chuckle, and he said, "We're all burnt out. Get back on the truck." Which is not the right answer.
No.
But it was the answer that I got. And I think that if I could tell young Patrick something of, like, that's horseshit. Like, get the help, take the time off when you need it, and that would probably be my biggest regret. But yeah, that's what I would tell myself. The same stuff I've been telling everybody. I was very fortunate. Like I said before, I got really lucky. I mean, this isn't me going humble pie. I'm not good. Like, I know that I'm good, but I also had an opportunity that a lot of people don't get a chance to get. So I also got really lucky.
Well, thank you very much for your time. Loved it. It was an absolute blast. I know everybody's going to love hearing from you and seeing this side of you, and I think it's going to be amazing. So thank you very much for your time. I really do appreciate you.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, guys. It was a lot of fun.
All righty, friend. Have a good night. Be safe. We'll talk to you soon.
Take care. Bye.